Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We're from group 6 from class. Wanna present our presentation that is figurative language. Next. Before we start, I wanna introduce our group. The member is one is Bilqis, second is Abdul Mohed, third is Kusnul Khotimah, fourth is myself, Ahmad Amtadibillah, and fifth is Ahmad Husay. Nice. Let's get to the material first. What is figurative language? Figurative language is a conspicuous departure from what competent users of a language apprehend as the standard meaning of words, or else the standard order of words. In order to achieve some special meaning or effect, figures are sometimes described as primarily poetic, but they are integral to the functioning of language and indispensable to all modes of discourse. Jadi, figurative language itu bisa dikatakan seperti ini. Mudahnya adalah sebagai bumbu penyedap sebuah tulisan agar lebih menarik dan tidak membosankan dalam sebuah karya tulis. So figurative, there's some common types of figurative language like simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, and apostrophe. Let's start with simile first. In a simile, in terms from different classes are explicitly compared by a connective such as like, as, or then, or by a verb such as appears or since. If the objects compared are from the same class, for example, New York is like Chicago, no similar is present. Jadi simile itu bisa dikatakan adalah sebuah kalimat perbandingan yang di mana perbandingan ini memiliki sebuah karakteristik seperti like yang paling mudah. Contohnya, the example is like this. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. In di sentence ini ada kata banding, dua kata banding. Di situ ada penghubung yaitu like, jadi di situ bisa dikatakan sebagai similar. Lanjut, yaitu the next is a metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that is used to make a comparison, but in way different from a simile. It makes the comparison true. In other words, it can be said that a metaphor is a complete comparison. Jadi metaphor ini adalah hampir sama dengan simile, yaitu tentang comparison, perbandingan, tetapi bedanya kalau simile tadi adalah yang eksplisit atau jauh tidak atau eksplisit lah seperti itu, sedangkan metaphor ini lebih ke implicit. Bedanya paling mudah antara metaphor dengan simile itu adalah dengan tanda tadi, yaitu or and etc. seperti itu. Untuk metaphor sendiri itu sebagai perbandingan, tetapi perbandingannya itu adalah dua benda yang berbeda, seperti your my sunshine, jadi kamu matahariku. Itu kan perbandingan dua benda yang berbeda, yang satu manusia, yang satu adalah matahari, seperti itu. Di sini ada contoh. The example is like this. She is the rose, the glory of the day. She is the rose itu adalah sebuah metafor untuk menjelaskan dia itu seperti bunga mawar. Tetapi perbedaan di sini beda benda. Seperti she itu adalah manusia dan rose itu adalah sebuah bunga. Seperti itu. Mudahnya seperti itu. Okay, lanjut akan the next is be presented for my friend.
Okay, the next is personification. The attribution of human feelings or characteristic to abstraction or to inanimate object is called personification. So personification describes inanimate object as if they had like a human characteristic. For the example, bedtime did beckon to the flowers, and then by noon most cunningly did steal away. And the second example is hope, thou bold taster of delight. The last example is the alarm clock meddling in somebody's sleep. We can look at in the last example, the alarm clock meddling in somebody's sleep. The alarm clock is the inanimate object that cannot, and actually inanimate object of course doesn't have characteristic like human. But here in this sentence, alarm clock explain that it can make somebody meddling in somebody's sleep. So it called personification. Or another in the morning. And of course the sun cannot smile because sun is inanimate object. But here the sun smiles in the morning. It is a personification. The next is hyperbole. A hyperbole is a rhetorical device that is mainly used to make something look and sound a lot better than it actually is. In other words, it can be said to be a form of exaggeration. It means too much. So hyperbole is exaggerates or too much to explain about something that too much. Whether in quantity or size or characteristic. We can look at the example. Here's the smell of the blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. Or another example is to infinity and beyond. It's called hyperbole. Or another example is her smile lights up the whole world and can melt ice cup. Of course, a smile cannot light up the whole world. So here hyperbole because the smile cannot also melt the ice cup. Just explain too much to something. It's called hyperbole. Or another example, the feeling is deep, like the feeling is deep as the Pacific Ocean, for the example. It's called hyperbole because too much when explain something. Okay, that's all. Next.
Okay, the next is apostrophe. Apostrophe is a feature of speech that is used to address someone who is absent or already dead. It can also be used to address abstract quality or idea, and even a non-living object. We can look to the example. Oh Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? The sentence is a line from the soliloquy delivered by Juliet. In the scene, she is found standing on balcony and thinking about Romeo, who is not there with her at that moment. Jadi di sentence ini uh, diambil dari percakapan dari Juliet yang mana pada saat itu Romeo Romeo is not there. Romeo tidak ada di sana. Uh, itu menunjukkan sebuah apostrophe. That's showing the apostrophe yang yang menandakan bahwa orang itu tadi absen dan tidak berada di sana. The second example is cross-show personification. Hope toh bol faster. Hope toh bol tester or the like is also an example of the figure of speech called apostrophe, an address to a person or thing not literally listening. Jadi contoh contoh sentence itu juga sebagai apostrophe, menunjukkan apostrophe karena merujuk kepada orang yang absen dan tidak ada di sana. Oke, next. Berikutnya adalah a list of figurative language on the telltale heart. Question number 1. Does the writer use simile? Why is it used? The answer is yes. The writer used simile. The example 1 is to prove that the writer used the simile is his eye was like the eye of a vulture. This simile was used by the narrator to compare the eyes of an old man with the eyes of vulture. Using the simile, the narrator conveys a strong image of the crime and the threat the narrator feels to the eye. Jadi pada simile ini digunakan oleh narator untuk compare the eyes of old man with the eyes of vulture, which is when the narrator is watch to the eyes of vulture, it's feeling the image of crime and threat. The second example is his eye, that hard blue eyes. This simile is used by the narrator to compare the color of the parents' eyes to something hard or cold, which is blue. Using this simile, the narrator highlights the eerie and suspenseful impression of eyes. Jadi simile ini digunakan untuk compare warna dari mata dari orang tua tadi, yang mana itu hard or cold atau yang berwarna biru. Itu mengapa menggunakan simile. Okay, next.
The second question is, does the writer use metaphor and why is it used? As the presenter before said that metaphor is an implied or indirect comparison, so it's different from simile. And yes, the writer used metaphor in his short story. The first example is, I rushed into the room crying, die, die. This metaphor is used by the narrator to describe his brutal actions when he attacks the parents. Using these words, the narrator not only expresses his physical actions but also expresses intense feelings of hatred and a desire to end the old man's life. This metaphor helps to highlight the narrator's insanity and brutality in committing the act of murder. And the second example is, but why does his heart not stop beating? Why does it not stop? The metaphor is used by the narrator when he tries to overcome his inability to control his feelings of fear and anxiety. Because of that, the narrator are wondering why does his heart or the old man's heart not stop beating. By describing the old man's heartbeat as unstoppable, the narrator actually reflects his inability to overcome the guilt and the fear that permeates him. This metaphor highlights the internal conflicts experienced by the narrator and shows his growing level of madness. The third question is, does the writer use personification and why is it used? Personification is a figurative language that make an object atau benda mati act like living creature. And yes, the writer used personification in his short story. The first example is, I smiled as I felt that success was near. As you can tell, the smile is not something that success. Okay, I'm sorry. In this sentence, the narrator gives human nature to success by stating that he feels success is near and happy. This is a form of personification because success has no ability to approach someone or cause feelings like pleasure. And the second example is, I could hear sounds I had never heard before. In the sentence, the narrator gives human nature to the voices he hears from heaven and hell by stating that he hears voices from heaven and hell. This is a form of personification because sound lacks the ability to originate from places like heaven and hell. And the next material will be presented by the next presenter.
The first question is, does the writer use hyperbole? Why is it used? Yes, the writer used hyperbole. For the example one, I could hear sound I had never heard before. The hyperbole is used by the narrator to emphasize how strong his feeling and hearing experience were after he fell ill, by stating that she heard voices from heaven and hell. The narrator magnifies the effect of her illness and highlight a dramatic change in her perception. Seperti yang kita tahu, hyperbole itu adalah kalimat yang dilebih-lebihkan. Di contoh yang pertama ini, penulis melebih-lebihkan setelah dia sakit, dia seperti mendengar suara dari surga dan neraka. And next example is, the hands of a clock moved more quickly than did my hand. The hyperbole was used by the narrator to describe the caution of and execution speed of his plan to kill the parents, by comparing the movement of his hand with very slow work. The narrator highlights his tension and persistent in kind of the act. Di contoh yang kedua ini, penulis melebih-lebihkan bahwa jam tangannya itu bergerak lebih cepat daripada tangannya. Terus next. And the last question is, does the writer use apostrophe? Why is it used? The answer is no. The writer don't use apostrophe in his short story.
I'm sorry, your mic is not on yet.
Okay, maybe that's all from our group. So thanks for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.